What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. The road to predict all 136 FBS level college football teams this summer is now going to take a trip to El Paso, Texas. We're back in Conference USA to talk about the UTEP Miners, who are going to look to take another step forward as their head coach continues to learn the FBS ranks. My name is Nate Pope, otherwise known as Tailgate Nate. Hey, thank you all so much for clicking on this video and for helping to support the channel. You want to support the channel even further, then please do what it says below, hit that subscribe button, and while you're at it, hey, you might as well ring the bell. Turning on notifications will ensure you don't miss an upload during prediction season, especially not one for your favorite team. I am a sports media graduate delving into the professional world of the industry, and if all of you want to see the cool stuff I get to do while still being up to date on what goes on this very YouTube channel, then give me a follow at TailgateNate29 on Twitter, Instagram, and feel free to even email me, tailgatenate29@gmail.com. I want to thank you all so much for supporting and interacting with me and the channel in whatever way you may be doing so. And with all that said and done and out of the way, let us now talk about Scotty Walden and the UTEP Miners. Scotty Walden had his first season as an FBS level head coach last year, and it maybe didn't go all according to plan. 3-9 was the overall record. Did win 3 conference games, while the wins did come in conference. Of course, was formerly the head coach at Austin P and was an interim head coach at Southern Miss in 2020. Before he did take that Austin P job. Now coming over to UTEP, we knew it was going to be a building process here, and I think you saw some good things in year one. There's a ton to build on and a ton of really good pieces here for 2025. How do we do preview predictions here on the channel? Well, we are going to go through roster overview, offense over here to the left, defense over here to the right, and at the end of the video, we will dive on in to the UTEP football schedule and give it a game-by-game preview and prediction. This video overall is here to tell all of you what I think about the Miners in 2025. Before we do get started, right down below me, returning production numbers are according to ESPN. They factor in portal additions only up to a certain percentage, and it's not very big. And then below that, recruiting and transfer portal ranks for the class of 2025 are according to 24/7 Sports. Let us start by talking about the offense. Mark Kala, however you pronounce the last name, that is how you spell it. He's your offensive coordinator this season. And let's start at the quarterback position. So Skylar Locklear was the main primary starting option last year. There were 2 other quarterbacks that did throw passes, Cade McConnell as well as JP Pickles. What a last name. But Locklear was the leading passer among everyone last season, 1,583 yards. 10 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and the biggest thing was his completion percentage was by far and away better than the other 2. So he's going to return to start, hoping to provide some consistency to his game. You take a look at Locklear's game log last year. First of all, the QBR overall was not that great. And you take the Tennessee game out, there were games where he was pretty good. Double overtime game against Kennesaw State, 327 yards and 4 touchdowns. Against Louisiana Tech, only 7 of 11. He might have gotten hurt or something in that game. You look at the game against Western Kentucky, only 11 of 17 for 82 yards. And so there is that inconsistency part of his game where he can go off and have some really, really good contests. He did so for the most part against Liberty, did so even in a losing effort against Southern Utah last year. This is a UTEP team that I think needs Skylar Locklear to develop some consistency and take that next step forward. However, he could not be the full-time starter this year. You have a very talented transfer in Malachi Nelson coming into the room. He was a stupidly highly recruited player that went to USC, then went over to Boise State, and has not played much collegiately. Last year, he did play a lot more, threw 17 passes, completed 12 of them for 128 yards, no touchdowns, only 1 pick. And so take away from that what you may. But there is no denying his upside. He's going to battle in this quarterback room. And if Locklear starts to have some of the inconsistency problems, I would not be surprised to see Malachi Nelson get some playing time here for this UTEP team. I do think it's going to be Locklear to start day 1. But Nelson absolutely could fit in there as well. And who knows? I highly doubt they do the 2 quarterback system. But the upside of Malachi Nelson might be a little too high to pass up on him playing quite a bit throughout this season. You go look at the running back room. Your lead men last year in Javon Jackson and Ezel Jolly are both going to be entering the transfer portal, and they portal away. Jackson is now over with UAB, and Jolly, not quite sure where he transferred. Think community, JUCO, maybe even an FCS team. No, sorry, I have it right here. It is Kilgore College. And so that is where he transferred away to. So the new room in the running back stable is really going to be very young this season. There are a lot of young pieces here. Ashton Emery's a redshirt freshman. Marquez Taylor's a redshirt sophomore. Now, you do get a transfer coming in. He's a Charlotte transfer in Hassan Wilson, who had 559 yards and 7 touchdowns on 6.1 yards per carry. So that's sort of the caveat right here is the projected starting pieces are going to be young, but Wilson is a guy that I think can step into this program and have a big immediate impact. Was a bright spot on a Charlotte team that has not been great over the past couple of seasons. He's averaged 6 yards per carry throughout his career, on top of being the most experienced piece in this room. Again, the RLADS depth chart has him in the 3rd string. I would likely think he probably is at least the 2nd string running back, if not works his way to the top back by the end of the season. 3 of your top 4 receivers return, and which is going to make your wide receiver room a massive strength this season, especially pairing with a returning quarterback in Locklear or a guy with some stupidly high upside in Malachi Nelson. The pieces return as such. Kenny Odom, your leading receiver, he's coming back from last year, 741 yards and 8 touchdowns. You also do return Cam Thomas, who will be returning to that slot position as a redshirt senior, 532 yards and 2 touchdowns last season for him. You do lose Trey Goodman, who is your 3rd leading target, but again, that number 4 guy does come back. 21 catches, 177 yards for Jaden Smith. You have some other good talent waiting in the wings, Ashton Nickelberry, and then you have a redshirt senior transfer over from Arkansas Pines Bluff, formerly from the Ohio Bobcats. It's Aramani Roan, and hopefully, again, I'm saying that name correctly. As far as your tight end room goes, your lead tight end in Marcus Vincent is off to the New Mexico Lobos. So that's a transfer you lose, but Cash Cheeks is a transfer coming in. Probably also one of the best names in college football. He is transferring in from Northern Colorado and is projected to be that starter. Judah Zinwa, I definitely butchered that last name. He does return as a redshirt junior, but he'll probably slot in behind Cash Cheek. So you take a look at the wide receiver room as a whole. Again, I like the top 3 pieces that you got. We'll see what the transfer in Aramoni Roan can do this upcoming season. But I overall think there's some really nice talent and some good pieces here in the pass catching room to help UTEP along and definitely give whoever the quarterback is going to be some pretty good weapons. Now, on the offensive line, it's going to see a lot of overhaul. There are a lot of changes on the O-line this year. However, it's still going to be a pretty experienced unit. 4 out of your 5 projected starters are going to be seniors, with the one not a redshirt sophomore transfer from Southeastern in Mark Robinson. So again, even though you do see, again, some pretty decent overturn there, it's an offensive line that already wasn't that bad last year. Only 28 sacks compared to some of the other teams that we've talked about. That's a fairly solid number, although still not great. You want to get that number down. And the rush game only allowed only gained 3.3 yards per carry. So I do think this is an offensive line that, with the amount of experience that they have, should probably expect a step up this season, and I think you're going to see some improvement out of the front lines this season. All right, let's now go on over to the defensive side of the ball. Let's talk about your DC Bobby Daly and this UTEP defense. Overall, there were some really good moments last season, and there was some solid production in a lot of areas. 36 sacks. Hey, that's really good. Your secondary produced pretty well. 18 turnovers overall. Okay, that's not too bad of a number, but there was nowhere near enough physicality, not a lot of toughness present consistently. This was a team that, kind of like Skylar Locklear at the quarterback position, was pretty inconsistent defensively. And you take a look at some of their games last year, a defensive stop or two, and they can avoid the overtime loss against Southern Utah. They were right on the doorstep at points at beating Colorado State. They ended up losing that one. Could have easily beat Louisiana Tech. That more so the offense needed to really get going. The defense stepping up could have made the New Mexico State game, Kennesaw State game a little less interesting, but albeit those are games that they still did win. So on and so forth. I think you have to develop this defense a little farther. And speaking of the 36 sacks that I mentioned a little bit ago, well, you're going to be losing 14 and a half sacks of that production because Maurice Westmoreland, or otherwise known as Mo Westmoreland, has transferred out over to Tulane. So he is gone. And you also do lose Kyron Duhan, who had 7 sacks last year. Westmoreland, by the way, 7.5. He is transferred over to Oklahoma State. So you lose your top 2 pass rushers, and your leading tackler, Dorian Hopkins, is also exiting the program. He leaves. This linebacking unit had 87 tackles, recovered a fumble, 2 interceptions. One, I believe he returned for, oh no, didn't return it for a pick six, just had an 85-yard interception return. 2 picks last year. I will correct myself. I think I might have said 1 earlier. So you do lose a lot off of this front 7. Well, okay, let's look at what you got coming back. KD Johnson, I think, is a really good returning piece on the interior of this defensive front. Pair him with a true sophomore in Ashton Coker. That's going to be a fairly solid interior led by KD Johnson. On the outside, though, transfers are going to enter in. Derek Burns, as well as Shikun Bowser. Both of those guys are in through the transfer portal. You do have Kelton Farmer, who enters the portal from Kentucky Wesleyan as an interior defensive lineman. Other than that, surrounding KD Johnson, portal pieces got to fit in, and other talent will have to step up. As far as your linebacking unit, Nate Diamond is going to be returning. He was your second leading tackler last year with 84 tackles. 1.5 sacks, 4 passes defended. Also did recover 1 of 7 fumbles last season. So that's a huge linebacker piece, as the 2 deep is really going to consist of a lot of transfers. Again, you have a true sophomore that's going to step up and hopefully play a big role for you in this room. But overall, again, a lot of transfers. Jaden Wilson is going to be transferring into this program. Wilson is a transfer. Oop, tapped on the wrong name there. He's a transfer coming over from New Mexico. Did have 33 tackles last season as well as 2 sacks. So I think he's going to be a pretty serviceable piece for you. And then you take a look at the linebacking room, the entire 2 deep. Well, you got 3 redshirt senior transfers that enter to, at very least, give this team depth. If not, hey, maybe one of those guys fits into the starting role at the Mike and slot linebacker position. So when you take a look at this defensive back room now, tons of top defensive back pieces are going to be leaving. You lose pretty much all of your top guys. However, your biggest piece from last year and your leading tackler among defensive backs last season, a guy by the name of Xavier Smith, is going to be returning to the program. 78 tackles, tied for the team lead with 5 passes defended, is an extraordinary safety. Jalen Shelton returns at corner. Lance Russell will pair with Xavier Smith to be that new starting safety this year. Neil Campbell is a transfer that comes in opposite on the other side to play corner opposite of Shelton. He is an Indiana Wesleyan transfer. And then, yeah, some returners, some transfers. Nice mix here in this defensive back room. Same kicker, new punter enters. That's your special teams report because, hey, kickers are people too. Shorter one today. Just did not have a lot of space for it with everything I wanted to talk about defensively. So, overall on offense, you get Skylar Locklear to be consistent. Maybe even you get the full potential out of Malachi Nelson. You're going to be doing something right on the offensive end. Defensively, try to find ways to fill in that sack production from what you lost with Westmoreland as well as Duhan. Even, again, a really good player in Dorian Hopkins, while not in the sack production department. Just find guys to step up in roles, and hopefully a lot of these transfers that they bring in are going to end up working out for them. I think there is some pretty high upside talent in a couple of different positions. They did bring in some really good pieces. Overall, I think there is enough here for Scotty Walden to make a step up this year for this UTEP program. I think they're going to be a lot more competitive than they were last season. Little graphics glitch there, I apologize, but we're moving right on away to the schedule. Your 2025 schedule for the Miners is sitting right over here. But of course, before we can take a look at previewing and predicting the UTEP football schedule, we got to look down below me at some odds courtesy of FanDuel. No, not me telling you to go place your money or bet your money or do anything of the sort. I am no person to do that. I am no gambling expert, but it just provides some good context to see how good the odds makers think UTEP is going to be this year. And the plus 1,300 odds is actually in the top half to win the conference. So UTEP is, I guess you could say, not necessarily one of the favorites, but they are a team that's right there in the middle of the pack that's going to try to compete for that spot, especially if a lot of things go right. There is a very long shot for this team to reach the college football playoff. They have the highest odds that you can get on FanDuel, but the important number with these G5 teams, this win total right here, 5.5, is where they have the UTEP Miners, and I think that's about right. You take a look at the schedule, there are some tricky ones, but a lot of winnable games in Conference USA. As I've said before in videos where I talk about this conference, the middle of this conference, teams like Louisiana Tech and maybe even Sam Houston State, Missouri State, Delaware, New Mexico State, maybe Kennesaw State if they can make some good improvements, UTEP, and Middle Tennessee, so on and so forth. Whoever you want to throw into the category of a mid-tiered team as it relates to Conference USA, it's going to be a battle, it's going to be a slog, and games are going to be competitive night in and night out. Let's start out with the non-conference slate because I think you do split this non-conference slate pretty evenly. Utah State does have a lot to figure out, yes, but I like the fact that Bronco Mendenhall is coming in. Everything's not going to work for him right away. Same sort of process he was going through at New Mexico before he took this job. And look, there still are some solid pieces. I'm not wowed by anything in this quarterback room, but Bryson Barnes does bring a lot of experience. You got some really good talent transferring in, especially Javen Jacobs, who is over from New Mexico. As well as some other pretty darn solid wide receiver pieces, Corey Thompson, Brady Boyd, and others. Defensively, you are going to be replacing a lot of pieces, but I think things are going to click for Utah State at some points this season. Overall, I don't expect it to be that great of a year as Bronco Mendenhall tries to build up this program to what he wants it to be. However, as far as this game goes, I think the road environment gives UTEP some trouble. So I do think that this is a game where the Aggies pull away the win. I think it's going to be a battle back and forth and really could go either way to me. I just happen to side with the way I have my predictions working out, happen to side with the Utah State Aggies. However, University of Tennessee Martin, that should be a pretty easy win there for UTEP. While UT Martin can be one of the better sides in the FCS ranks, and UTEP did lose to their FCS opponent last year, I don't foresee the same thing happening again this season. On the road at Texas, don't need to talk much about this one. Arch Manning, Simmons, and Taff, and just so much, Baxter, Wisner. I could go on and on about the talent that laces this Texas team. Texas will obviously win the in-state matchup here against UTEP. Then you get the game against ULM, Louisiana Monroe. This is a program that I think is going to try to take some strides and take some solid steps this year. There really is not a whole lot that enters through the transfer portal, really, if anything. So they're kind of building from within. And while I think there are some solid pieces here, there really is nothing to me, for the most part, that blows you away. And ULM will, I think, make some strides this year based off a pretty solid group of returning production. I don't think they do anything super special. And I think UTEP is better coached and is more talented. Not to mention that literally, I think yesterday, as of recording this video, Bryant Vincent, their head coach, just got named to a front office role. So who knows if he's still going to, I think he's their interim athletic director or something along those lines. So we'll see if he's still the football coach. I do have to read up more on that subject. So I will just preface what I said there by saying I need to get more knowledgeable about that, something I haven't had the chance to read about quite yet. However, this is a Louisiana Monroe team that, while they can make some solid strides, they won't do much here against UTEP. Okay, now we're going to dive on into the conference slate, and you start out with some really tricky games, really 3 tricky games. You're at home against Louisiana Tech. Well, the Bulldogs, this has to be their year, right? For Sonny Coombe's sake, for this program's sake, there was a lot that has been expected out of Sonny Coombe with this program, and he has yet to really deliver. This has got to be a year where Louisiana Tech really delivers in Conference USA. They got a lot of returning talent. They have a good head coach in Sonny Coombe. There's no reason not to. However, Louisiana Tech, I think, has got some trench play things to figure out, some inconsistency things to figure out, and it really is that piece of, we've been saying this for a couple of years about La Tech, and it hasn't come to fruition, so there is that skepticism part of it as well. I think UTEP gets above 500 for the first time this season, and they beat Louisiana Tech at home. Still like the Bulldogs team, and overall, they could prove to have a better record and be more talented than the logo that sits behind me, but as of right now, that'll be a win for the UTEP Miners. You do get now a Wednesday game. Just notice this as well. That La Tech game is a week 5 game. I had the date right, just not the week. Probably looked like a 5 to some of you, and maybe that still looks like a 6, but that is a week 5 game, La Tech and UTEP. Date was right, week was not. Apologies for that. So you get your bye week, and then you go ahead and dive on into this weekday game, Wednesday against Liberty, which, look, I know UTEP is going to make some strides this year. I think they're going to finish with a better record than they did last year. They get this game at home. Liberty doesn't have Caden Salter or Quentin Cooley. I get it. I get it. Liberty is too well coached. They are still too talented. And there's a reason. This is a team that's been sitting towards the top of Conference USA ever since they got here. It's because of everything that I just said. They're very well coached. They're very talented, even without a lot of the pieces that they lost. Ethan Vasco's a quarterback transferring in that I still really like. You get some good portal pieces to help fill in the necessary gaps. And there was a lot of talent waiting in the wings at Liberty last year. That's going to be a loss for the UTEP Miners, as I think this game against Sam Houston State will be as well. Another Wednesday game, so you get back-to-back Wednesday games here. Sam Houston did lose a lot of pieces. I understand that. This, however, is a Bearcats team, spelled with a K, that I think is going to still, maybe they can stumble their way through non-conference play and probably not going to have much success there. But once they get into Conference USA play, bam, that's where rubber's going to meet the road. And I think Sam Houston is going to really emerge as a pretty dangerous team. Hunter Watson is returning at quarterback. You got some good skill position pieces surrounding him. Defensively, yes, there's a lot that is overhauled, but Antavius Fish is a great linebacker that transfers into the program. And Phil Longo, that head coach now, after they lost Casey Keeler to Temple, yeah, he's pretty familiar with the program, has been there before. So I think Sam Houston's still going to be pretty darn good this season. That is a loss for UTEP. They fall back below 500, and I think they get into a little bit of trouble here. Again, Kennesaw State's going to make some improvements this year. I didn't think, and a lot of other people didn't think they'd win a game last year. Well, they won 2, and they can easily increase that win total to 4 this year because they have a top 10, if not top 15, returning production value in college football, on top of getting a ton of talented pieces in through the portal. I think Kennesaw State is going to make some real strides. Are they going to be fantastic? No, probably not, but I think they're going to make some real strides as an FBS team this year and pull off some pretty darn good wins in conference play. This will be one of them. UTEP loses that game to Kennesaw State. They also lose this game to Jacksonville State, even though the Gamecocks, another team in Conference USA that is replacing a ton of pieces. Also to mention, they're going to be getting a brand new system in here with a guy in Charles Kelly that has never been a head coach. You got a new quarterback, new big running back piece, so on and so forth. This is a team with a very strong foundation set, and the foundation that this program sits upon, I think, is really going to help carry them. Not to mention, they still do have some really good talent, such as Michael Petway at wide receiver, and some good defensive pieces up front. I still think they're going to be a solid and talented team, and that foundation that they sit on really going to help lead them this season. Okay, UTEP. You got to go on the road to play Missouri State next. Now, I've said this, and look, you have to win out to make a bowl game here, which I think is very, very doable. Now, you got 2 of these games on the road against teams that you haven't seen play at the FBS level yet. Now, if you were to ask me, and again, I say this whenever a team has both on the schedule, maybe this is telegraphing it a little bit, I always say Delaware is more equipped to handle the FBS level than Missouri State. I think that's as much of a roster thing as it is a program thing. I think Delaware's got the better program, and I think Missouri State, much like Kennesaw State's going through right now, has a very big learning curve to try to get into the FBS level and find their successful footing. I do think this is a Missouri State team that overall, hey, they can find some good success once they get settled in. It's still a really good program. I just don't think it's going to all work out for them in year 1. New Mexico State, don't count them out. That's going to be a team that is going to be much improved this season. I do like what New Mexico State has got. And again, I think 3-9, 4-8 last year. Again, that's going to be one of those teams in the mid-tier Conference USA battling it out to maybe try to get their way into a bowl game, or just, night in and night out. It's one of these matchup games, right? Where you look across the line and your opponent is just as talented, if not maybe slightly above or below your talent level. Logan Fife coming in at quarterback, I think, is going to be a huge piece for them. He's really going to help elevate this offense. Defensively, though, I do have some concerns. And while transfer pieces are great, I think you need this defense to step up in a lot of ways. And the UTEP offense, especially with Locklear, or at this point, maybe it's Nelson coming back. I do think that you win that game. So it all comes down to this. Again, I told you Delaware was more equipped to handle it. And I think Delaware, one of the teams that surprises a little bit. when we got Jacksonville State and Sam Houston to come into the FBS level. There was one that surprised, Jacksonville State, and one that needed a little bit of time. I think Missouri State's the one that's going to need a little bit of time, but Delaware will surprise. There's some really good pieces on this team, including a graduate quarterback, among some other solid pieces. Delaware's going to be, I think, a pretty solid competitor in Conference USA this year. So all in all, it is a step up from last year, but it maybe feels like a little bit of a disappointment because you had that bowl game value right in front of you. And look, by all means, you can beat Kennesaw State on the road. You can beat Delaware on the road. Heck, you could beat Utah State, Sam Houston, or Jacksonville State. You can win any one of those games. But as this team continues to build towards the right direction, as Scotty Walden continues to implement his system within this program, this very well could be a season where UTEP does explode and is that Conference USA sleeper team. There's a reason that conference odds is so high. I can understand that. But for right now, I think it takes a little bit of time. They just miss a bowl game in 2025. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Remember to play hard but tailgate harder. See y'all in the next video. Goodbye.